The sky above Crater 9 was always gray. Smoke from factories and slave ships turned the clouds black. The city smelled like oil, blood, and fear. In the center of the colony, behind locked metal gates, a secret market was alive with noise. It was the slave auction. Humans, aliens, and traders from across the galaxy gathered in the shadows. Some came to buy workers. Others came to buy pain. Jace, a human engineer, stood at the edge of the crowd. He wasn't here to buy anyone. He had only come to repair a mining machine. But he followed the noise out of curiosity. And now he was standing in front of a nightmare. A raised platform stood in the center. Bright lights shone on bruised and beaten figures, slaves lined up in chains. Most looked half dead. Few made eye contact. "Next up," the auctioneer shouted. "Rare blood, strong body, fertile stock." A tall alien woman was pushed forward. She had bluish skin, wild black hair, and silver eyes filled with fire. She wore torn clothes and heavy chains around her neck and ankles. The crowd whispered. "She's not trained. She looks dangerous. She's too proud." The auctioneer laughed. She was caught escaping a royal ship, claimed to be noble, but look at her now, a rebel with no owner. The woman did not lower her head. She stood tall, silent, refusing to show fear. "No bids?" the auctioneer asked. "Come on. She's built for bearing strong warriors. Who wants her?" No one raised a hand. "She's trouble," someone muttered. "Probably cursed," said another. The auctioneer grabbed her chin and forced her face up. "Say something, girl, or we'll send you to the pits." That's when she looked up, straight, at Jace. Her silver eyes locked onto his. And then, in a voice loud enough for all to hear, she cried, "Have mercy!" "Please, I'll bear you strong children, just don't let them take me," the crowd gasped, then laughter. Loud, cruel laughter. "She begs. Now she wants a mate? She must be desperate." But Jace didn't laugh. He felt something twist in his chest. This wasn't a show, that wasn't a trick, that was fear in her voice, real fear. She wasn't asking to be bought, she was begging to be saved. Starting bid, 50 credits. The auctioneer shouted. No one moved. 40. Anyone? Still silence. 30. Jace's hand rose slowly. 30. The auctioneer blinked. Human engineer bids 30 credits, the crowd murmured. Jace felt heat on his skin. He didn't know why. He was doing this. She wasn't his problem. He didn't need a slave. He didn't want one. But her voice had cracked something in him. Sold, the auctioneer said quickly. Take your prize. The woman was unchained and dragged off the platform. Jace stepped forward. A guard pushed her toward him. She's your problem now, the guard said with a smirk. Jace caught her before she fell. Her body was weak, but she was still breathing. She looked up at him, confused. Why did you buy me? Jace didn't answer. Not yet. He helped her into a hovercart and drove toward his small workshop on the edge of the colony. Back in his room, Jace gave her food, water, and a blanket. She sat quietly on the floor, watching him with wide eyes. You're not like the others. No, he said simply. You didn't touch me. You didn't even speak until now. I didn't buy you to own you, he replied. I just couldn't leave you there. She lowered her head. Then what do you want from me? Nothing, he said. Not unless you want to give it. She looked up slowly. I don't understand. You will. She held the blanket tighter. You heard what I said, on the platform. Yes. I meant it. Jace looked at her. What's your name? She hesitated. Karel. Karel, he repeated. My name's Jace. You don't belong to me. But while you're here, no one touches you. No one hurts you. Karel blinked. Her lips trembled, and for the first time, she looked like she might cry. Karel had slept on the floor that night, though Jace offered her the bed. She refused without speaking, her back against the wall, wrapped in the blanket like armor. She didn't close her eyes. She barely moved. She didn't trust him. Not yet. By morning, Jace was already working on a broken power core in the corner of the room. Sparks danced from his tool, and the hum of energy filled the air. Carell finally spoke. Her voice was soft but steady. "You didn't touch me." Jace didn't stop working. "Didn't plan to." She looked at him carefully. "Then why buy me?" He set his tool down and looked up. "Because you asked for mercy." She studied his face, confused. "Mercy is rare, especially from humans. I'm not like the humans you've met." She hugged her knees to her chest. "Everyone I've known wanted one thing: control." He sighed. "I don't need control. I just don't want to watch someone get destroyed while I stand and do nothing." Carell's eyes flickered. "You don't want anything from me? Not even my body?" "No," he said simply. "You're not for that." She was silent for a long time. "Then what am I here for?" she whispered. "You're here because you needed help, and I had the power to give it." Carell lowered her head. Her fingers touched the collar still locked around her neck. "They would have broken me, and then sold the pieces." "I know," Jay said. He stood up and walked to a shelf. He returned with a small key. Without asking, he gently reached forward and unlocked the collar. It dropped to the floor with a metallic thud. Carell flinched at the sound. But then she breathed deeply, as if the air was different without the weight. "You're strange, Jace. I get that a lot." She looked around the room. Metal walls, tools, spare ship parts, but clean, organized, honest. "Do you live here alone?" she asked. He nodded. "I don't like crowds, or orders, or people who take more than they give." She looked at him carefully again. "You were a soldier once. I can tell." He hesitated. "Yeah, long ago. I left after the Karnos mission. Couldn't do it anymore." Carell's eyes widened. "You fought at Karnos?" "Yes." She stared at him. "My people died there." Jace nodded slowly. "I know. I saw it." They didn't speak after that. The silence between them wasn't cold, but heavy. Real. Later, Jace cooked a simple meal: rice, green root, and broth. He handed her a bowl. She took it with both hands, unsure. "It's hot," he warned. She sniffed it, then took a small sip. And froze. "What?" he asked. She swallowed slowly. "No one's ever made food for me." Jace sat across from her, eating quietly. "Get used to it." She smiled, just barely. That night, she sat on the bed, but still didn't sleep on it. She looked at Jace, who was working late into the night again. "You don't ask questions. Only if you're ready to answer." She touched her stomach gently. "I lied at the auction." Jace glanced over. "What part?" "I said I would bear strong children, but I didn't mean it." He raised an eyebrow. "Okay. I only said it to make them want me. I thought maybe someone would save me." "I did," he said. "But I didn't expect someone like you." Jace smiled faintly. "Then maybe it's your lucky cycle." She looked away. "You should have walked away. You could have used those credits for something useful." "I did," he said. "I used them to save someone who mattered." She looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time something in her eyes softened. "You keep saying I'm not a slave, but I still feel like one. That's because no one's ever let you feel anything else." She stared at her hands. Then she whispered, "Can I stay? Just until I remember what freedom feels like." Jace leaned back in his chair. "You can stay as long as you want." She smiled again, this time a little wider. For the first time in her life, Carell had not been claimed. She had been accepted. Days passed quietly. Carell no longer flinched when Jace entered the room. She ate at the table now. She even helped clean the workbench. There was still silence between them, but it had changed. It wasn't heavy anymore. It was peaceful. Jace noticed the small things. She walked with discipline even when no one watched. She scanned every corner of a room before entering. Her hands were soft, but her steps were sharp. Too sharp. One night, while fixing a power regulator, he dropped a tool. It hit the floor with a loud clang. Karel reacted instantly. She spun, around crouched low, eyes fierce, like a soldier trained for battle. Jace slowly raised his hands. It's just a wrench. She stood straight again, embarrassed. Sorry. Instinct. He tilted his head. You were trained. Military? She didn't answer. Instead, she turned away. Jace didn't push her, but later, as she slept, something caught his eye. Her back. She had rolled over, and her shirt lifted slightly, revealing strange glowing lines across her skin. Not slave markings. These were older. Deeper. Jace frowned. He had seen marks like these before, long ago, on battlefield enemies too fast and deadly to be caught. Warriors of a fallen alien tribe. He whispered to himself, "Is that what she is?" The next morning, Karel found him sitting with her old collar in hand. He wasn't staring at it, he was staring at her. "Those markings," he said quietly. "They're not from slavery." She froze. "I know what they are," he added. "You're not just any prisoner." Karel closed her eyes. Then, slowly, she sat down. "They're birthmarks," she said softly. "From my mother's side. My bloodline is forbidden." "Why?" "Because it's powerful," she replied. "We were warriors once, protectors. But when our planet was taken over, they hunted our kind, called us dangerous, unfit to obey." She looked up. "If they knew who I really was, they wouldn't have sold me. They would have killed me." Jace leaned forward. "So you've been hiding it your whole life?" Karel nodded. "Even from myself. But the body remembers. The training is in my bones. I never asked to fight, but I was born to survive." He nodded slowly. "That's why you stood so tall on the auction block. You weren't begging to live. You were daring someone to stop you." She smiled faintly. "I didn't expect anyone to say yes." Jace looked at her seriously. "If the slavers find out who you are, what you are, they'll come for you. Not to punish. To use." "I know," she said. "Do you want to run?" She shook her head. "I've been running my whole life." He leaned back. "Then maybe we fight." Her eyes locked onto his. "Together? Only if you trust me." Karel stood slowly. She walked to the workbench where he had laid her broken collar. She picked it up and threw it into the fire. "I trust you," she said, "more than I've trusted anyone." Just then, the comm on Jace's wall buzzed. A voice came through, cold, robotic. "This is a public broadcast from the Slave Control Bureau. One of our assets has gone missing. Female, high-value, dangerous bloodline. If anyone has information, report now. Reward, 10,000 credits." Karel stared at the speaker. Her face went pale. "They know," she whispered. Jace stood up slowly. "And they're coming." She looked at him, eyes shaking. "You should give me up, you'd be rich." He stepped closer. "I'm already rich." "How?" He reached out and touched her hand. "Because I found someone worth protecting." Though night was too quiet, too still, Jace didn't sleep. He stood at the window of his small workshop, staring into the darkness beyond the colony lights. He knew what silence like this meant. They were coming. Karel stood behind him, dressed in thick boots and a worn cloak he had given her. Her silver eyes searched the shadows too. "I feel them," she whispered. "They don't come with noise. They come with stillness." Jace turned to her. "We leave. Now." He had already packed a survival bag. Food, tools, warm clothes, just enough to vanish. "There's an old mining route," he explained. "Up through the western ridge. Cold but abandoned. No scanners, no patrols. If we make it there, we can hide. Carell nodded. I'll follow your lead. But as she stepped outside, she looked back at the small workshop. The first place she had ever been treated like something more than cargo. I won't forget this place, she said softly. Then, we'll build another, Jace replied. They moved fast through the night. The mountains loomed ahead, sharp and dark. The wind cut through their clothes and snow bit at their skin. But neither of them complained. Not once. Jace kept checking behind them. He didn't see anything. But Carell's instincts were sharper. They've released trackers, she said. I can feel the air change. They're close. How many? She tilted her head. 4. Maybe 5. Not soldiers. Hunters. Jace muttered. Perfect. They reached the foot of the mountains just before sunrise. There, behind, a pile of jagged rocks was a narrow tunnel, hidden by time and dust. Jace pulled aside the cover. Inside. Now. Carell crawled in first. It was tight and dark. The ground sloped upward, rough and cold. Her hands scraped against the stone. Jace followed close behind, sealing the entrance, behind them. Inside there was no sound but their breathing and the crunch of their steps. No lights, no fire, only darkness and hope. They traveled the tunnel for hours. Finally, the narrow path opened into a small cavern, high up in the mountain. There was no furniture, no comfort, but they were alive and safe. For now, Carell dropped to her knees and took a long breath. Jace handed her a thermal blanket and sat beside her. Think they'll track us here? He asked. She shook her head. Not quickly. These paths are sacred. Old blood knows them, but they will come eventually. Jace nodded. Then we'll be ready. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Carell asked, Why did you bring me here? You could have run. Alone. Jace looked at her. I don't run without purpose. You're my purpose now. She stared at him, stunned. I'm just one woman, she said. Broken, hunted, used. You're more than that, Jace replied. You're a survivor, and your bloodline, it was made to fight, not serve. She looked down at her hands. What if I don't want to fight anymore? He nodded. Then I'll fight for you. Tears welled in her eyes, but she wiped them away quickly. I never thought I'd meet someone like you, she said. Someone who doesn't see me as a tool. You're not a tool, he said. You're a fire they tried to bury in ice. Carell smiled faintly. You say strange things, human. I say true things. They both laughed softly. But their moment was cut short. Carell stood suddenly, alert. They're here, Jace jumped up. Already? They tracked our heat trail, she said. It's faint, but they're trained. Jace grabbed a plasma tool and handed Carell a shock baton. You still remember how to fight? She met his eyes with a steady gaze. I never forgot. Outside the mountain, the hunters crept through the snow, silent, fast, and deadly. But this time, Carell wasn't running. She was ready to rise, and Jace was right there beside her. The cave shook slightly as a distant blast echoed through the tunnel. Jace quickly turned off his scanning device. They're blowing through the lower rocks. They want to trap us inside. Carell stood near the wall, her shock baton gripped tightly in her hand. Her expression was calm, but her eyes burned with fire. They don't want to kill me, she said. They want to breed me. Jace looked at her confused. Breed? She nodded slowly. My tribe's bloodline is nearly gone. I'm one of the last with full markings. If they control me, they control the next generation of warrior blood. Jace clenched his jaw. That's disgusting. Carell stepped forward. But it gives me an idea. He turned to her. What? She looked into his eyes. Her voice was steady but soft. If I choose someone first, willingly, they lose their right to claim me. Jace frowned. That sounds like an old tradition. It is, she replied. Warrior blood binds by choice, not by force. And once the bond is formed, It can't be undone, even by the slave lords. He raised an eyebrow. What are you saying? She stepped closer. If I offer myself to you, and you accept, we become bound. No one else can legally claim me, not even the reclaimers. Jace shook his head, confused. Karel, this isn't the time. She reached up and gently touched his chest. I'm not asking you to use me, she whispered. I'm offering something sacred. My body, yes, but also my future. My blood. I would rather give you an heir by choice than be turned into a breeding machine by force. Jace froze. Her words weren't desperate. They were strong, pure, not spoken from fear, but from courage. He swallowed hard. You want this? She nodded. Not because I have to, because I choose you. You barely know me. I know enough, she said. You bought me but never touched me. You gave me warmth without chains. You gave me safety without cost. She took his hand and placed it against her heart. That is more than any male of my kind has ever given me. He looked at her, really looked, and saw no trick in her eyes. Only truth. You're sure? He whispered. I'm ready. Jace lowered his head and touched his forehead to hers. If this saves you, he said softly, then, yes, I accept. Her hands trembled, but not from fear. They stood there for a long moment, the wind howling outside the cave walls. The bond was sealed, not with fire or rings, but with mutual choice. And choice, for Karel, meant freedom. But freedom had a price. The rock wall behind them exploded with a blast of smoke and fire. The reclaimers had arrived. Karel didn't flinch. She turned to face the hole, shoulders back, eyes sharp. Remember what I told you, she said to Jace. Now I fight for us. She pulled a blade from Jace's supply bag and charged into the dust and light. Jace followed, heart pounding. What stood before them wasn't just an army. It was her past clawing to take her back. But this time, she wasn't running. She wasn't hiding. She wasn't begging. She had made her choice. And with that choice came strength. The mountain shook again, as smoke rolled through the tunnel entrance. Karel stepped forward first, blade in hand, her face calm, almost too calm. Jace had seen soldiers panic. But Karel? She looked like she had returned to something familiar. 3 armored reclaimers burst into the cave opening, shouting, in their native tongue. There she is. Take her alive. Kill the human. Karel didn't wait. She moved like a shadow through fire. Her blade flashed once, twice, clean, sharp, brutal. The first soldier fell without even raising his weapon. The second swung at her, but she ducked low, swept his legs, and knocked him unconscious with a precise hit to the neck. Jace barely blinked. The Karel he had known, quiet, careful, unsure, was gone. Now, the warrior blood she had once hidden had awakened. The last soldier aimed a shock rifle at Jace. Karel didn't hesitate. She leapt across the rocky floor and tackled him, knocking the rifle from his hand. The two of them rolled, fists flying, grunts echoing against the stone. Jace ran forward to help, but she stopped him with a shout. Let me finish it, and she did. A moment later, the last soldier was down. Jace stared in disbelief. You just took down 3 trained reclaimers, alone. Karel stood, breathing hard, blood dripping from a cut on her forehead. She wiped it away and looked at him. My mother was a general, she said. My father was never known, but I was raised in silence with the fire sealed inside me. Today it burned free. He walked closer. And you didn't just fight to live. No, she said. I fought to protect you, because you were the only one who didn't see me as a weapon. Jace placed a hand on her shoulder. I see you now, as you really are. She smiled, but it was brief. The fight wasn't over. We need to go, she said. More will come. They climbed out of the cave and into the icy wind. The sun had begun to rise, casting pale gold over the snowy mountain. Their clothes were torn, their hands bloody, but they were not weak. They were free. They didn't stop walking until they reached a ridge that overlooked the valley below. Smoke rose far in the distance, likely from the wreckage of the reclaimers' small camp. Jace set down the pack. We can hide here for a while. The mines run deeper beneath this hill. Abandoned tech tunnels, shielded from scans. Karel didn't answer. She was holding her stomach. Jace noticed. Are you hurt? She shook her head slowly. No. Then, after a long pause, she said something that made his heart stop. It's begun, he frowned. What? Karel turned to face him. There's life. Inside me. Jace blinked. You mean? She nodded. It happened fast. It does, with my kind. The bond was real, and so is the child. He didn't know what to say, but her eyes were steady. This child is more than blood. It is proof. Proof of what? He asked quietly. That I was not broken. That your kindness changed more than just my life. She took his hand and placed it on her stomach. You didn't just save me, Jace. You saved us. Jace looked out over the valley below. For the first time in years, he didn't feel alone. He felt needed. Not as a fighter, not as a buyer, but as something simple and powerful. A protector. They sat there in the wind, the sun warming their faces. Below them, the world still hunted, still burned, still wanted to chain people like her. But it was too late. Her bloodline had awakened, and it would never be silenced again. 1 year later, the warships that once patrolled the skies above Kralor 9 were gone. The slave auctions had ended. The reclaimers who hunted the old bloodlines had vanished into the dark corners of history. But far from the burning cities, hidden, in the quiet peaks of the mountain range, life had begun again. A small wooden cabin stood by a frozen lake. Smoke drifted gently from the chimney. A soft light glowed through the windows. Inside there was no fear, no chains, no pain, only warmth. Jace stood at the door, carving a small wooden figure by hand. He had grown a short beard, and though a scar still marked his left shoulder, his eyes held peace. Behind him, a soft voice called out, Jace, she's awake. He smiled and stepped inside. Karel sat in bed, her silver eyes glowing with quiet strength. A small child lay in her arms wrapped in thick cloth. The baby had soft blue skin, small fingers, and tiny eyes that shimmered like both starlight and earth sky. She has your calm, Karel whispered, but your stubborn grip. Jace laughed gently and sat beside them. That means we're in trouble already. Karel looked down at the child. She will never wear chains. No, Jace said. She'll wear armor, if she wants. Or a dress, Karel added with a smile. If she wants. They both laughed, but soon Karel's face grew serious. I still think about it sometimes on that day at the auction, the cold floor under my knees, the voices laughing, the chains burning my skin. She looked up at him, and then I looked at you. Jace took her hand gently. You asked for mercy. You gave it. He nodded. But it didn't stop there. Karel's voice was soft. No. It became everything. She placed the child in a small cradle by the fire and stood slowly. I was born into a world where my body was currency, she said. But now my body carries life, not orders. Love, not fear. Jace stood with her. Karel turned to him and placed her hands on his chest. Our people may never understand what we did. They may never believe that a human and a forgotten warrior could make peace through kindness. They don't have to believe it, Jace said. She's the proof. They looked at the child, tiny, peaceful, alive. A child born from a bond, not a bargain, Karel whispered. And one day she will walk without shame. Jace nodded. And we'll walk beside her. Carell's eyes grew wet with emotion, but she didn't cry. She was a warrior, a mother, a woman who had begged for mercy and found something greater. Later that night, snow fell gently outside the cabin. Carell rocked the baby while Jace repaired an old communicator. He wasn't planning to send a signal. He was waiting to catch one. One day others would come, other women, other children, other warriors hiding like Carell once did. And when they did, there would be a warm fire waiting, and a man who understood what mercy could grow into. Final scene. In the morning, Carell stepped outside with her daughter in her arms. She looked over the white mountains and whispered something in her ancient language. Jace stepped beside her. "What did you say?" Carell smiled. "I said, the fire is alive again." He looked at her and nodded. Yes, it was. And this time, it was burning for something worth protecting.